Every business has a different definition for activation. So first, we have to define it. And this is going to allow you to measure and improve it over time. We talked about core value before, and activation is really just getting people to perform actions that deliver that core value. So, a new user is going to be activated once they perform that key value delivering action. So let's say that they see one of your ads on Facebook or something like that, and this looks valuable to them, so they click on it and they arrive at your website. Before they can actually experience that value, there are some key actions they need to take before they get to the moment where they're like, oh, this is awesome. This is usually referred to as the aha moment. People who don't perform those actions and therefore don't experience that aha moment are probably going to churn. So how do others define it? Well, social apps like Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, their core value is really social connection. So some of the key actions that they use for activation are adding a certain number of friends once you sign up, or following a certain number of people, or sending a certain amount of messages. Once you do these things, you feel that social connectedness and you feel their core value. So Facebook's famous metric is having a user add 7 friends in 10 days. And they found that people who do this retain a lot better. Ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft have a core value of effortless transportation. So the key action for them is taking your first ride. For you to really feel the value of the product, that aha moment, you have to experience tapping a few times on your phone and then magically having a car appear in front of you. It's pretty awesome. For Slack, the core value is better team collaboration. So for you to experience that, you need to send a certain number of messages to teammates to really feel that. So to take it directly from their CEO, he says, we decided that any team that has exchanged 2,000 messages in its history has tried Slack, really tried it. It hit us that regardless of any other factor, after 2,000 messages, 93% of those customers are still using Slack today. This is what I mean when I talk about activation being a leading indicator of retention. So how can you define activation? There's 2 steps. 1, determine your product's core value. What is that core value that you're trying to get people to experience? And then 2, find the actions that deliver this value and help users experience that aha moment. So to determine your core value, you can go with your gut. You know your product. Let's say that you have a messaging app like Slack. It's not too crazy to assume that sending messages would help people experience your core value. You can also think about, how did I get them here in the first place? So when you acquired them, you promised them a certain value that enticed them to come to your website. So all you have to do, it's pretty simple, is just deliver on that promise. And then finally, you can ask your current users what they love about you through surveys and things like that. Depending on what they tell you, you will probably get a better sense of the core value that your product provides. Then you need to find the actions that deliver that core value. So what you can do is you can look at the actions of users who have retained past a certain time frame. Let's say they've stuck around after 1 week, and then compare those users with those who did not make it that far. So they churned sooner than 1 week. And then you can see what actions set them apart, because that'll give you an indication, okay, people who churned probably didn't feel the value, whereas people who stuck around probably did. And one way you can do that is through cohort analysis. So quick sidebar, what the hell is cohort analysis? Well, a cohort is a group of people who share similar characteristics at a particular point in time. Let's say Canadian users who sign up on May 24th. And cohort analysis is particularly helpful for understanding if you're improving retention over time, because we can compare those different cohorts signing up at different time points, for example, and seeing if different segments retain differently. So let's take a look. So a common use case for cohort analysis is retention curves, and that's what we have here. So you can see that this graph is showing the percentage of people who visited every day after signing up. And here we're looking at our October 1st sign up cohort, anybody who signed up on that day. And let's say that it was 1,000 people. All of them visited on their first day, and then gradually, as each day went by, fewer and fewer came back. So things we're looking at here are, first of all, a healthy curve flattens over time. So if it doesn't, you're in trouble, because that means you're not retaining any customers. But if it does, that means that there is a group of customers that in the long term is sticking around and coming back. And your job is to decrease the slope of this curve, because that means early on you're getting more people to stick around and not drop off. And then move this curve up, because that means in the longer term, more people are coming back and retaining. So let's go back to those use cases from before. Are we improving over time? If we compare our sign-up cohorts month over month, we can see in this graph, oh, actually in November, our week 1 retention is better, because people who signed up in November are retaining at higher rates than people who signed up in October. There could be other things at play here, but it's also possible that some of the efforts that you made to improve activation are working. For use case number 2, we can actually plot different segments on this graph to see if they retain differently. As we can see here, users acquired from Facebook actually retain better than those acquired from SEO for whatever reason. You could also plot different geographies on here to see if they retain differently. Okay, let's get back to finding those activation actions. So to find the actions that deliver the core value you provide, you can actually use this analysis to look at what actions did these retained users do that the people who churned failed to do. So you can dig into the data to see what the differences are between these two, or you could get people from each group on the phone and see what they have to say. To give you a more concrete example, here's what this looks like at Udemy. To determine our core value, we can do a gut check and realize, okay, people get value from our courses. Pretty obvious. And if we think about how did we acquire students in the first place, well, we promise them a course that will teach them what they want to learn right now. And finally, if we talk to some of our loyal users, we hear that they love Udemy's flexibility, the value and affordability of the courses, and our high-quality instructors. So that distills into learn anything on your terms. Next, if we want to find the actions that deliver that core value of learn anything on your terms, we can compare these groups. So what we found, and this is true, these are made up numbers though, people who make their first purchase actually retain a lot better than people who don't. And if we dig deeper into this, it's pretty clear. People who have their first purchase are enabled to experience the core value of Udemy, and that's probably why they retain better. So let's take somebody seeing an ad for a piano course. They click, they take a look. People who purchase get to experience learning piano and experience the awesomeness of a Udemy course. And people who don't just don't get it, and they disappear, and we probably won't see them again. So a quick recap. Create a definition for activation so that you can measure and improve it over time. And define activation by determining your core value and finding the actions that deliver that core value to customers. And finally, cohort analysis is a powerful tool for measuring retention and determining what those key activation actions are.